My next guest's new book reveals stunning insights into the dysfunctional Trump family that actually shaped her. Donald Trump's niece, Mary Trump, writes, quote, "Nobody liked Donald when he was growing up, not even his parents. As he got older, those personality traits hardened. The hostile indifference and aggressive disrespect that he'd developed as a toddler to help him withstand the neglect he suffered at his parents' hands." She also details Donald Trump's widening cruel streak, a cruelty that's now on display for all of America and the world, frankly, to see for the third general election in a row. Just this week alone, Trump, while at an anti-Semitism event, slammed Jewish voters who don't vote for him, promised to reinstate his cruel travel ban, bar refugees from Gaza, and he platformed an attack from Sarah Huckabee Sanders on Kamala Harris over not having biological children. Is it 3 strikes and 34 felony convictions? You're out? Will America finally say goodbye to Trump in November? Joining me now is Mary Trump, the host of The Mary Trump Show podcast, the niece of Donald J. Trump, and the author of the new bestseller, Who Could Ever Love You? Mary, my friend, it's always so good to spend time with you and a privilege. I'm going to get to your book in just a couple of minutes, but you always have such keen insight into Decision 2024. I have to ask you, we hear complaints from Republicans about, quote, hateful rhetoric coming from Democrats, and yet hateful rhetoric, that's a GOP specialty, something that Trump has taught his minions well. Do you think that there's been enough of a clear response from Democrats saying, you know what, sometimes you have to punch a bully in the nose?
Katie, first of all, it's wonderful to be here with you. And yeah, I know we should not be surprised at Republican hypocrisy anymore, but it is still pretty shocking that the party of anti-immigrant hatred and anti-Semitism and anti-LGBTQ rhetoric and misogyny has the audacity to complain about Democrats' rhetoric. And I mean, specifically what they've been saying is that by warning Americans that Donald Trump is an anti-American candidate, that he is a danger to the future of American democracy, which is absolutely true. The man is a traitor who incited an insurrection against his own government. That the Democrats calling it like it is what's endangering Donald Trump and what is putting this country in a precarious position. It is complete and utter nonsense. And I think Democrats need to do more about calling out what's happening in the Republican Party, and specifically and especially with Donald Trump, because let's face it, the problem has become that his hatefulness, his cruelty, the danger he presents to this country is said to be, quote unquote, baked in. No, we need to highlight it every day at every opportunity.
You know, Mary, this is the perfect segue to talk about your new book, which is fantastic. All of your books have been amazing. But one thing that you made sure about this new book that came out that you want to make sure is clear, this is not a political book. So let's dispel any idea. But part of this book, though, speaks to your childhood, but also the Trump family childhood for somebody like Donald Trump. And let me be explicitly clear. No passes are given to Donald Trump to justify his behavior. But the insight you provide in your new book, Mary, is spectacular because it speaks to how Donald Trump was raised by Fred Trump Sr. And do you think that childhood that Donald Trump had, the psychopathy that we see, the sociopathy that we see coming from the childhood of Donald Trump, is really being seen now in a manifestation, the things he does and the things that he says?
Kitty, it's an excellent point, and the answer is absolutely. I've said this before. We should absolutely have compassion for the child Donald was. He had a terrible childhood. He suffered enormously, as did his other siblings, and as have many of us, right? The problem with him is twofold. First, the traits about him that we see as problematic, the tendency to bullying, the cruelty, the mendacity, the delusional excesses, were valued by his father, my grandfather, Fred, and I think we could say with some confidence, put to good use. But the second problem is that Donald is exactly the same person now as he was when he was a teenager. And we should always, always beware of anybody, especially people in power, who do not evolve as human beings. And he never has.
Mary, and so a huge portion of your book that really resonated with me, and I think is going to resonate with millions of readers, is the trauma that you sustained through your childhood, and then kind of the double whammy of COVID and Donald Trump, right? COVID affected so many of us, the lockdown really amplifying a sense of isolation. You write that you were warped by COVID and Donald's continued presence in our politics. I mean, you're a very private person who's been forced and yet almost voluntarily being put out in a public way, Mary, because you believe in the defense of democracy so much, because you know so much about the psychosis that is Donald Trump. But you say that this book is not a political one, but it clearly impacts politics because America has been traumatized by Donald Trump. You've been traumatized by him and growing up as a Trump. Talk about why it was so important for you to be so transparent and honest about what you've been through over the last few years and why you kind of hope it means something to other people.
It's always difficult to locate precisely why one writes a particular book. But I kind of hit a wall a couple of years ago, and I realized that I was very broken. I mean, obviously, I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, so the traumas I suffer from are quite old. But we now live in an America in which we are individually and collectively traumatized on what seems like an almost daily basis. And it was very, very important to me, just as an individual, to figure out why I was struggling so much, but also to look around and recognize that so many of us were in the same boat. And how are we going to find a way through if we continue to be subjected by the kinds of cruelty and backsliding we've seen in the last 4 years? And I think one impetus was this recognition that although in many ways we're better off than we were, because President Biden and Vice President Harris have really pulled us out of the darkness of COVID and snatched democracy from the jaws of autocracy, it doesn't feel all the time like we're better off because our politics are worse and American democracy is in much more danger than it was. So I really wanted to have a conversation with myself and with other people about why that is and what we can do both individually and together to get through this and get to a place where we are no longer traumatized constantly and we can actually start to heal ourselves.
Well, my admiration, as always, to you, my friend, for being so honest about what you've been through. Who Could Ever Love You, your newest book, already a bestseller. I urge everybody to go out and read it. It's an honest conversation with Mary Trump, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Mary.